Letting kids pick their own study path in college or future careers is super important. Have you ever felt like you're living someone else's dream? Like you're on a path that wasn't paved by you, but for you? This is a story about that exact feeling, and it's a story that needs to be heard. Let's talk about Mark. Growing up, Mark was the model son. He was bright, obedient, and always eager to please his parents. They had a very clear vision for his future. He would become a doctor. It was a noble profession, a stable career, and in their eyes, the absolute pinnacle of success. So, from a young age, Mark's life was filled with science tutors, extra biology classes, and conversations about medical school. He never really questioned it. Why would he? He loved his parents, and he wanted to make them proud. The thought of their smiling faces on his graduation day was all the motivation he needed. When it came time for college applications, there was no discussion. It was pre-med or it was nothing. Mark got into a decent program and his parents were ecstatic. They threw a big party, telling all their friends and family, "Our son, the future doctor." Mark smiled and accepted the congratulations, but a small nagging feeling had started to form in the pit of his stomach. He was good at science, sure, but did he love it? The truth was, he didn't. What Mark truly loved was art. He'd spend hours sketching in his notebooks, losing himself in colors and shapes. He dreamed of creating, of telling stories through images. But he pushed that dream down, burying it under textbooks and lab reports. He told himself it was just a hobby, a childish fantasy. The real world required a real job, and doctor was as real as it got. The first year of college was a brutal wake-up call. The pre-med track was intensely competitive. Suddenly, Mark wasn't just good at science anymore. He was surrounded by people who lived and breathed it. They spent their weekends in study groups, debating complex biological processes with a passion Mark just couldn't muster. He struggled to keep up. The lectures felt like they were in a foreign language, and the long hours in the lab felt like a prison sentence. He'd sit there, staring at chemical formulas, his mind drifting to canvases and paintbrushes. He started falling behind. His grades, once his pride and joy, began to slip. First, it was a C on a chemistry exam. Then a D in organic chemistry. Each failing grade felt like a personal blow, a confirmation of his inadequacy. He tried to study harder, pulling all-nighters fueled by energy drinks and sheer desperation. But it was like trying to force a square peg into a round hole. The information just wouldn't stick. He started avoiding calls from his parents, making excuses about being busy. How could he tell them their future doctor was failing? The shame was overwhelming. He saw his peers, the ones who were genuinely passionate about medicine, excelling. They were forming connections, getting research opportunities, and confidently moving toward their goals. Mark, on the other hand, felt like he was drowning. He became isolated, skipping classes because he couldn't bear to face the professors who knew he was struggling, or the classmates who were soaring past him. The campus, once a place of promise, started to feel like a maze he couldn't escape. His dream, or rather his parents' dream, was turning into a nightmare. The pressure mounted until it became unbearable. One day, after receiving yet another failing grade, something inside him just broke. He couldn't do it anymore. The thought of facing his parents with the truth of his failure was more terrifying than anything else. He felt like a complete disappointment, a waste of their hopes and their money. The weight of it all was crushing him. He found himself walking aimlessly, his mind a dark storm of self-loathing and despair. He ended up at a quiet, secluded bridge overlooking a river. The water below looked so calm, so final. For a moment, it seemed like the only way to escape the pain, the shame, and the future he couldn't face. He thought about his parents' disappointment, the "I told you so" looks from relatives, the pity from his friends. It was all too much. He felt that ending it all was the only way out. But as he stood there, lost in his dark thoughts, a gentle voice cut through the silence. "It's a beautiful view, isn't it? But it looks even better from a park bench." Mark turned to see an elderly man sitting nearby, a kind and knowing look in his eyes. He hadn't even noticed him. Embarrassed, Mark mumbled an apology and started to walk away. "You don't have to go," the man said softly. "Sometimes a stranger is the easiest person to talk to." Something in the man's calm demeanor made Mark stop. He found himself sitting on the bench, and without really planning to, the entire story just poured out of him. The pressure, the failing grades, the hidden passion for art, the crushing weight of his parents' expectations, and the terrible thoughts that had brought him to the bridge. He confessed it all, the words tumbling out between sobs. The old man listened patiently, nodding as if he understood everything. He didn't interrupt, he didn't judge. When Mark was finished, his voice raw and his face wet with tears, the old man finally spoke. "Son," he said, his voice warm and steady, "it sounds to me like you've been trying to climb the wrong mountain. It's no wonder you're tired. But just because you've been climbing the wrong one doesn't mean you can't find the right one." The simple metaphor hit Mark harder than any lecture or scolding ever could. The old man continued, "You feel like you've failed, but you haven't. You've just learned what isn't for you. That's not a failure, it's a discovery. It is never too late to start over. Forgive your parents. They love you, and they did what they thought was best, even if it was wrong. More importantly, forgive yourself for not being who they wanted you to be. Then go and be who you are." He looked at Mark with a gentle smile. "Go and climb your own mountain. You'll be surprised how quickly you reach the top when you're on the right path." That conversation was a lifeline. For the first time in years, Mark felt a flicker of hope. The old man's words were simple, but they were profound. It's not too late. Forgive them. Forgive yourself. Start over. That night, Mark didn't go back to his dorm room filled with pre-med textbooks. He went to a 24-hour art supply store. He bought a small sketchbook and a set of pencils, and for the first time in a long, long time, he drew not because he was hiding, but because he was healing. He drew the old man on the bench. He drew the bridge. He drew the feeling of hope returning. The next day, Mark took the hardest step of all. He called his parents and asked them to meet. He didn't do it over the phone. He knew he had to face them. They met at a coffee shop, and with his heart pounding, Mark told them everything. He told them about the failing grades, the misery, the lies. And then he told them about his love for art. He showed them his sketchbook. He braced himself for anger, for disappointment, for lectures. But instead, he saw something that shocked him. Tears in his mother's eyes and a look of deep regret on his father's face. They had no idea. They had been so focused on their own vision of his success that they had been completely blind to his suffering. Seeing their son so broken, realizing how close they had come to losing him, shattered their dream of him being a doctor. There were a lot of tears that day, and a lot of apologies. Not just from Mark, but from his parents as well. They apologized for putting so much pressure on him, for not listening, for not seeing him for who he truly was. It wasn't an instant fix. The trust had been broken, and it would take time to rebuild. But it was a start. It was the first honest conversation they had had in years. With his parents' reluctant but genuine support, Mark made a change. He officially withdrew from the pre-med program and enrolled in the university's art school. It was like breathing for the first time. The classes were challenging, but it was a challenge he welcomed. He was passionate. He was engaged. He spent his weekends in studios, not labs, and he loved every minute of it. His grades soared. He wasn't just getting by, he was excelling. He discovered a talent for digital animation, and his work started getting noticed by his professors. Years passed. Mark graduated from art school with honors. He didn't become a doctor, but he did become a creator. He landed a job at a top animation studio, and today he is a lead character designer on a series of blockbuster animated films. His work has touched millions of people. He found his mountain, and he climbed it with a passion and joy he never could have found on that other path. One evening, he got a call from his parents. They had just seen his latest film. His father's voice was thick with emotion. "Mark," he said, "we just left the theater. The whole family went. We saw your name in the credits. It was so big on the screen. We are so proud of you. Prouder than we ever could have been if you were Dr. Mark." Mark's story has a happy ending, but it came dangerously close to being a tragedy. And it begs the question, why do we do this? Why do we, as parents, as a society, put so much pressure on young people to follow a specific, pre-approved path to success? We think we're helping, that we're guiding them towards security and stability. But what happens when that path crushes their spirit? What happens when our dream for them becomes their nightmare? The lesson here is so crucial. Our children are not extensions of ourselves. They are not here to fulfill our unlived dreams or to validate our choices. They are unique individuals with their own passions, their own talents, and their own mountains to climb. Our job isn't to draw the map for them. It's to give them the tools, the love, the support, the encouragement to draw their own. It's to trust that they can find their own way, even if that way looks different from what we imagined. Let's listen more. Let's ask them about their dreams, not just our expectations. Let's celebrate their passions, whether it's science, art, music, or mechanics. Because a happy, fulfilled child who becomes a passionate artist is infinitely more successful than a miserable, broken one who becomes a doctor. Let's help them find their own mountain. Their life, and maybe even ours, will be better for it. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, please share it. Let's start a conversation about this in the comments below. What is your passion? And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that matter. See you next time.